Hello and welcome to episode 298 of the Stacey West Podcast, once again broadcasting live on YouTube as well as ending up in your ears via whatever your podcast medium is. My name is Gary. I am one of your regular hosts, and one of your regular pundits is Mr. Chris Lamming. How are you doing today, sir?
Hiya. Very well, thank you.
Good.
I went to that new Stack place in Lincoln for lunch. It was excellent. Highly recommend it. Just a little freebie there for everybody. It's genuinely great. So go and try it.
Start with food. That's how we mean to go.
Start as we mean to carry on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But how are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad actually. After what was a little bit of a ropey weekend, to say the least. I don't want to go into too much detail on here, but needless to say, there was a moment when I got back to the house on Sunday, which reminded me a little of the scene from Trainspotting, where Spud goes into the kitchen and she's going, "They're my sheets," and then so me coming in with a bag of clothes, going, "But they're my clothes." That's my Scottish accent, by the way. So
it wasn't bad.
It was terrible.
It wasn't good either. Yeah.
No, it wasn't good at all. So, So obviously we're going out live on YouTube. It's an awkward time. We've given nobody any advance warning. So thank you to the 5 people that are watching. It's very good of you. But as we've said, we're going to record all of these live on YouTube, so you can watch them and watch them back. Now, we do have a plan for the summer. We're going to be looking at doing one podcast a week. Whatever happens, we'll produce some content for you on a weekly basis. We're hoping potentially to have a very recent player on coming up very soon. I can't remember what Charlie and Ben doing next week. We had our Stacey West meeting, didn't we?
We had our AGM last night.
Our AGM,
yes.
Yeah. We did.
We came up with some really good ideas. We've got some ideas of things we can do over the summer. Hopefully some more content, just generally some really cool ideas for YouTube, good ideas for the podcast, and some other bits and bobs for the main season as well. So lots to look forward to, but yeah, needless to say, the plan is to have plenty to keep us going throughout the summer.
Yep, definitely. So keep an eye on everything. Keep an eye on the socials. We now have a presence on Instagram, which is courtesy, as some of you will know, Stuart Wells. Stuart Wells is taking over our Instagram and he's going to be doing some shorts and things like that as well. I've become a little bit of a sensation on TikTok with another one going to a 5-figure viewing. So I'm a little bit of a big deal now. So, all inquiries to my agent, who I got from Billy Big Bollocks Charlie. So it's going to be an exciting summer. There's not a lot to talk about Lincoln City orientated at the moment, but I guarantee that we're going to run to an hour today because it's Chris. But at the AGM, we did discuss strategies for keeping Chris in check. So we'll see how that goes today. We'll see if
you've also specifically said every time you mentioned overrunning, you specifically said it's not just Chris. Whilst looking at me directly. So it's all right. It is me. That's fine.
It's not actually just you, to be fair. It really isn't. But anyway, there we go. So what we're going to talk about today. So just so you know what's coming up on the rest of the show, there are a couple of transfer rumours out there which we're going to discuss. The upshot is we don't think we're going to sign either of them. So we thought for a bit of fun, we're going to tell you, we're each going to take one player and tell you why we might sign them. A little bit of a kind of, they do it on a debating team, don't they? Argue the point that you disagree with. So it's going to be a little bit like me saying I'm going to vote Tory and tell you why. Ain't going to happen, but we'll do our best anyway. There's some big news on the fan experience. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, really positive for the club. And then we're going to do a retrospective on last year's summer transfer window. Now, it's always the window shuts, it slams shuts in most instances. But for me, it just gently eases closed. You know it's going to happen. And when it does, instantly, there is a clamour to judge the transfer window. Has it been a success? Now, I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can only just do it after one season. So we're going to look back at last season's transfer window, which I think when it closed, we were at a gig at the drill hall on the day that it closed, and we felt, do you know what, that's not a bad transfer window. So we're going to look back and see, was it or was it not? But first of all, let's start with the first rumour. So this appeared via Pete O'Rourke, Sporto Pete, I think he is on Twitter. So he's an Irish journalist. I think he writes for Football Insider. He's got some stuff right. He's got some stuff wrong in the past, but he's one that's generally regarded in the industry as relatively stable. So when he puts a rumor out there, you can do some debate around it without it being something crazy like Bristol Rovers might sign Ethan O'Rahan, which I know made Chris laugh.
It did make me laugh. By the way, we said earlier, we're not even going to dignify that with a discussion.
No, we're not going to dignify that with a discussion. But the discussion that we are going to dignify is Theo Vassell. So Theo Vassell is a 27-year-old central defender. He came through the ranks at Stoke City. Off the top of my head, because I don't have the information in front of me, I think he was at Gateshead in the National League for a while. He certainly played for Wrexham. He played for Port Vale. He made his debut when we beat them 4-0 in the Cup and played all 90 minutes when we beat them 6-2 in the league. Plays right-sided centre-back. He's been at Salford City, I think, for the last 2.5 seasons. He's racked up over 100 appearances for them. I think it's 121. He has been offered a new deal, we understand, from Salford, not signed as yet. He's linked with a move to us, Mansfield Town and Notts County. Listeners to the podcast, readers of the site will know that's my rule of 3. If there's 3 teams or more mentioned, I don't put a lot of weight behind the rumour. The last time there was 3 teams or more mentioned, it was some striker called Joe Taylor in January, and I rubbished it more or less straight away. So even a stopped clock is right twice a day. Chris, Theo Vassell.
Is this the bit you want me to argue as to why I think we are going to sign him, or to tell you the truth?
No, let's go with the truth first, and then we'll do the debating task afterwards.
I don't think there's a lot in it, if I'm honest with you. I don't think he was a massive standout in League Two. Good for defensive duels, but not a lot else really in a team that, let's be honest, really struggled in the league below this season. There's quite a big gap between our finishing position and Salford. Is more than the whole league in that regard, more than 24 teams. So, yeah, if he was one of their better performers in a struggling team, Joe Taylor, for example, was the best performer in a team that was really struggling in League Two, and he made the step up fantastically to League One. So if he's one of the better performers at Salford, then maybe he's primed for a step up. For me, a step up seems a Mansfield, a promoted team into League One, or a team with aspirations of promotion in League Two, would probably seem more realistic than a team with aspirations of a playoff push for Championship football the following season. I feel like that's a big old jump, to be honest. For someone who's 27 years old, 27 isn't old, but it's not like we're recruiting someone with potential sell-on value. It's not someone that's particularly proven in League One. So someone of a similar age would be like Rico Hackett, but we knew he was a proven kind of player at our level. It just doesn't seem to add up for me.
No, obviously I concur. I've said that in a couple of articles this week. The first alarm bell for me in terms of whether it's got any legs or not was his age at 27. Because it's okay. I can see if we're going to sign a free agent, I can see us signing 27, but we're going to sign a free agent from League Two that we have an idea that we might be able to develop, like an Ali Smith, for instance. Whereas I can't see us signing a 27-year-old who realistically, he'd have to have a hell of a season with us in order to be somebody that we may make money off. I know that that's not the sole reason that we're looking for transfers. It's not all about making money. But 90% of the signings that we've made over the last 2 seasons, certainly the permanent signings, have been of a certain age and have been of a certain fit. I think the last 2 players that we signed directly out of League Two on a permanent deal, again, I'm happy to be corrected if I missed somebody, but obviously there was Ali Smith, 23. The season before that, I think there was Charles Vernham, who, off the top of my head again, was 25 at the time. Paudie O'Connor was 23. 25 is right on the cusp, because you get a year down the line, he's 26. He's going to have got 10 goals and 10 assists for somebody in the Championship or somebody above us in League One to want to buy that player. So I can't see it. I don't want to make it look like we're just rubbishing Theo Vassell. But for me, straight up, if he gets a move out of League Two into League One, I'll actually genuinely be shocked.
Yeah, I think I will, unless I say it's one of those clubs that are kind of coming up from League Two that have a little bit more knowledge. I just think it just doesn't make a lot of sense. You have a few ticks in your head that like, okay, does the age profile fit? And that if it's a tick, then great, okay, brilliant. Does the profile fit tactically? Does he fit in regard to like history in terms of the level he's played at? And I kind of think if we're going to sign someone of that age, it's going to be someone that can come into the team now. Not everyone is in the team to make us money, but it would be therefore someone that comes into the team now that has a real positive impact in our starting 11. And likely that would be someone who you've got a little bit of evidence, I would say, that suggests that they're capable of playing at that level. It just doesn't make sense it would go for someone that doesn't have sell-on value and doesn't have a huge amount of experience playing in League One. And yeah, so for those reasons, it doesn't make sense. But
so for what reasons
try and argue either way.
What reasons might it make sense?
I've got, like I said, this is very much clutching at straws, I think. But number one, it's free. Wouldn't cost us a fee. We've just released TJ Ayoma, who was very much a squad player, very much a backup player, or that's kind of where he ended up under Michael Scubala. But when we signed TJ, I don't know for sure, but I imagine he will have been at the top end of our wage structure at the time because it's a big signing at the time. We beat some big clubs to his signature. So I'm wondering, do we want to recruit someone who would be happy to play as a fringe player squad role on a lower wage than we would be able to, that we have TJ? And basically, does it mean get something done early? That's your backup player at right centre back done. They're going to be happy. You've got a little bit of extra money to play with then for other areas of the pitch. And also, of course, we've not only has TJ been released, we've lost Alex Mitchell as well. So with that player coming in, even with that mentality of being potentially a fringe player, there is ding, ding, ding potential pathway for them to stake a claim of a first team role if they impress in pre-season. So again, don't think it's likely, but if I was to try and kind of look at it from the other angle, then that's the best I could come up with. He was 18th in League Two for defensive duel percentage won, so it was 75.66%. Mitchell and O'Connor were similar for us, almost identical percentage. They're the two players in us that featured in the top 30 in League One. So similar skill set, I suppose, if you're seeing him as a like replacement for Mitchell in pure defensive ability, but it was of course a league below. So yeah, I've done my best there to try to find something that might be the reason why.
That wasn't a bad go, I think, to be honest. I remember doing some articles on the site about a year or so ago now, where I was trying to put positive spins on negative people. I think I did David Holdsworth, and I think I might have done Chris Sutton as well. I'm not sure if I did Steve Tilson. I mean, I'll have a go, but my God. So I quite like that. So I'm going to have a go in a minute, but we'll go over first of all to the news. So the player that we've been linked with today, and it's come from Graham Bailey, who is somebody with a decent reputation. I seem to think he's got like 100,000 followers on Twitter when I went on there. That's impressive. I mean, if that's what you measure impressive by these days, of course, the size of your following. It wasn't what was impressive in my day. It was the size of your car back then. Anyway, so I'm reading this from the Gazette from Blackpool, so do apologise for the reference, but it says the Seasiders are among several League One clubs battling it out for 25-year-old Northampton Town forward Louis, and we'll say a pair. We'll call him a pair. They're battling it out with Barnsley, Lincoln City, Mansfield, and Stevenage. He's out of contract at Sixfields this summer, with an extension yet to be agreed after he was offered fresh terms. So he's been playing for Northampton Town. He's been offered fresh terms by Northampton Town, which he has yet to sign. And it seems that 5 League One clubs are looking at him, allegedly, which is what, 18% of the division. I mean, it's just got that ring of agent trying to drum up business, as with Vassell, hasn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. It breaks your rule of three. And it's also those clubs that have... I'm going to put inverted commas that he's been linked with are they're all very different clubs with different aspirations, aren't they, and different wage bills. There's not a lot of joined up thinking there. I know we're we're impressed in terms of the depth that we go into with our scouting department and our recruitment. We've had the pleasure of having some insight into that. And even if we are slightly ahead of the curve, pretty much every other club in League One is going to have an element of that, an element of depth. We use Y-Scout, for example, as for help for us with statistics. Every single League One club has access to that and more. So, yeah, I just feel like it's a little bit strange that the likes of Mansfield, the likes of Stevenage, and the likes of Barnsley, for example, are all potentially looking at this player that couldn't nail down a starting position really for Northampton. Made a lot of appearances, but wasn't a kind of a first choice guaranteed starter for Northampton this season. Someone it's not all about goals, but someone that only scored 6 goals in 41 appearances. Yeah, and then on Y-Scout, I say it's only Y-Scout, which is we're not looking at the whole picture here, but there's nothing on there that really stands out. It doesn't excel in any part of the pitch that another player in our team doesn't, if that makes sense. It's not like a different profile of player there that doesn't work. It's in terms of like a pressing forward, Ben House is far superior in terms of recoveries, in terms of XG per game. These are the players that are comparable or better. Just don't know where he fits really.
Fair enough. I think that's a good assessment. And my gut reaction is I agree. I'm not even going to do an article on the site for this one. I mean, at least with a rule of 3, they've limited it to 3 teams. This is literally just, it's like throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks, isn't it? It's like, well, we'll put a promoted team in. We'll put, Stevenage with a new manager in. We'll put a playoff chasing team in. I mean, like you say, there's no joined up thinking whatsoever. 25 years old, and you just turned 25. So, yeah, my official line here, my official thought is no. But let's argue for him potentially being a target. Now, actually, there are quite a few arguments why he could be a target. First of all, often there isn't something in Y-Scout's numbers and there isn't something in a past record that identifies or marks out a player to the layman, which is obviously what we are, as being a big asset. I think Ben House is a really good example of that because you can't really see the pressing stats that Ben House had at Eastleigh. He came out of the non-league. When we signed him, it was just like, well, he's going to be a project player. And actually he's turned in, okay, he didn't have a great season last season due to injury, but we see what he's turned into. He's turned into a real asset. So that could be Louis Appert. There could be something that we see in him that you can't glean from the numbers. Another really good example of that is Zach Bradshaw. And we signed Zach Bradshaw, who was playing central defensive midfield and right wing for Woking. And we've signed him because on the videos that the scouting team have gone into, they've seen him as a left wing back. And he barely ever played left wing back. And all of a sudden it's, well, we can do something with him. So there might be something in Louis Appert that we haven't particularly seen. It's my understanding, like last season, that we were looking at a centre forward who I didn't rate at all and ended up going to another League One side, recently relegated. And again, it could be that. It could be that there's just something there that the scouting team have seen that nobody else has seen. Now, I actually did spot something on Y-Scout that marginally impressed me, and that was that for the last 2 years, he's outperformed his XG. So for last season, his XG was 4.28, but he scored 6 goals. He also managed 2 assists, and he spent a lot of the time coming off the bench for Northampton, who, let's remember, had a decent spell at one point. And so if you were out of the team at that point and find it hard to get back in, it could reflect negatively on your goal return. Look at it this way. If somebody in the Championship's looking at Ben House now, and they're going to go, well, there's nothing in his numbers, is there, that makes us want to sign him. He only scored 2 goals. He couldn't nail down a place in the team. Season before in League 2, he also outperformed. So he was 8 goal involvements last season. Season before, he was actually 11 goal involvements, 9 goals overall, an XG of 8.57. And the season before that, he actually had 10 goal involvements, came up with 6 assists. Now, actually, for a striker, 6 assists is relatively high. If you look normally at a striker, there'll be maybe 2 or 3 assists in a season. So is it that he's a supporting striker? Is it that we've seen potentially a 10 in him? I don't believe any of this, by the way. These are just rhetorical questions that I want people to go and have a listen to. And that's more or less it. I mean, age-wise, he's just on the cusp. He's Charles Vernon type on the cusp. I don't think for 1 second at all that he will sign for Lincoln City. We've just had a question come in from one of the viewers, and I just want to bring it up and just address this, if I may. So it has come from Sam Hart, and Sam says, will this one actually go on Spotify? This is a Spotify issue that we have. So people who are listening to Spotify on an app, on a dog and bone, on their mobile phone or whatever, will find out that right now there is only up to episode 295. So the last 2 or 3 episodes have not gone on. My understanding is this one probably won't either. However, it is on Spotify. If you are on a laptop, you can find the link. And what I'm going to do is take the link from the laptop and put it into the browser on the website. And if you click on that on your phone, it opens it. So it's there. It's just for some reason it's not showing it. It's not just the Stacey West issue. It's an issue that several podcasts are taking. So our apologies for that. Both me and Ben are trying to talk to Spotify at the moment. We're having no luck whatsoever. But it is an issue that we have, and it's one that we are desperately trying to address. So thank you, Sam, for that. Chris, were you convinced by my Louis Appert argument?
No. Sorry, not at all.
There was some good points in there, surely, wasn't there? There was some decent points.
Your point, let's be honest, your points were maybe there's something that isn't in the stats. So the argument is as good as maybe there's some magic beans that he has that we haven't seen yet.
Outperformed his XG, 11 goals.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, it's just there's not a lot of XG there. That's not. I don't want to ever fall into the trap that you judge a striker solely on goals, as you know. Tom Hopper was a really valuable player for us and hardly got anywhere near the goal. So there's an element that you could be that supportive sort of player there. For me, it's the fact that there's an argument we do have a gap in the squad for a centre forward. With Joe Taylor leaving. Of course, we have got a returning Tyler Walker, though, but of course, there's question marks over Tyler Walker in regards to which Tyler Walker do we now have as part of Lincoln City? And that's unproven, depending on how pre-season goes, really. But let's assume that Tyler is going to at least be part of the squad. We've got 4 players that are really genuinely good enough, I think, to be part of a League One squad. If you argue that there's gap for one more striker, for me, that's either going to be someone who is very much a project player, who isn't necessarily going to be put into the limelight straight away, and you give minutes here and there, or it's going to be a marquee number 9. I can't see us signing another squad player, particularly someone that's of a similar age to other, to House, for example. It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't add up. So that's why it's a no from me, really. I just don't see how it fits into our squad and our structure at the moment.
Yeah, I think we've done really well there for 23 minutes to discuss 2 players who neither of us think will ever play for Lincoln City. But I think what I really wanted to demonstrate is it's easy to look straight at a player. Was he any good for Salford? No, we're not going to sign him. Whereas actually all professional footballers have got something going for them. And one man's trash is another man's treasure. And there are players, look at Hakeem Adelican, and not in relation to us, but in relation to Gillingham and Doncaster. We went to Gillingham, should have torn up League 2, couldn't get a kit, couldn't get a game, didn't impress, goes to Doncaster, smashes it out of the park, although not his penalty, obviously. He didn't really smash that at all. It's horses for courses, really. Let's talk about something that is specifically Lincoln City orientated. So this was, I believe, embargoed at 3 p.m. today. I was just checking it wasn't still under embargo. So Lincoln City have been named the best club in League One for their matchday family experience. The EFL's Family Excellence Scheme, which sees clubs assessed through mystery shoppers, rated the Imps as the best in the division and the 3rd across the whole EFL. It assesses the family experience clubs provide and rewards them with gold, silver and bronze status for the quality of the match experience across a range of touch points, including ticket purchase, matchday entertainment, accessibility, facilities, and communications. We were celebrated for the quality of our pre-match communication to support as the family entertainment and the service of their fan representatives. There's a quote from Clive, which I think is worth dropping on. Everybody at the club and foundation who helped us achieve gold standard yet again can be very proud of their achievements. We're one of only 13 clubs to reach this standard, but this is the minimum our supporters now expect on home match days. it's one of the pieces of news that will come out and 50% of supporters won't pay any attention to it. And 50% of supporters will recognise exactly what goes in to making that happen, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's great. I also don't think it's surprising because, like I say, the 50% that we'll notice are well aware that we're well above average at the experience that we provide. We've only got to go to various away days, and you realise what the fun experience is like for most other clubs. I think, we're spoiled a little bit in regard at home. And then because of that, like Clive says, it becomes expected. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having high expectations. It's just great that we've got to that point, and it's a massive credit to the club. And like you say, it's news that may get buried a little bit as the summer progresses, but doesn't make it any less important or less worthy of note.
No, absolutely. I mean, and there's one or two things on there I want to pick up on. First of all, the fan zone, which do I remember the first, and I'm happy to be corrected, the very first game where there was a fan zone, and I think it was Barnet at home on a Tuesday night. We beat them 2-1. I think it was the first season we came back into the league, wasn't it? Because it was one of the first things that Liam wanted to put into place. The proper fan zone. I think fans gathered outside, for instance, for the Macclesfield game, but a proper fan zone. And I remember a story of Liam, whether he told me or someone else did, that he walked down behind the ground and he said, right, this is where our fan zone is. And somebody said, but cars park there. And Liam's response was something like, well, move them then. Because there is that thinking. And I think it's a case at many football clubs that don't reach the gold standard is, well, we can't do that because we can't do this because. This is down to an awful lot of people. This gold standard is down to a huge amount of people. Great team right across the foundation, right across everything. My honest opinion is it started the day Liam Scully walked through the door. I really do, and maybe not. Maybe it started when Clive walked through the door, and Clive appointing Liam helped to manifest that. But I just feel that we've never had a man in Liam's position who he's quite as accessible or forward thinking in what he does. And we've had some decent CEOs before and we've had some bad ones, but he really is absolutely zeroed in on fan focus. And that is just, it's spread like that flare at the Raytons gig, spread red all over your nice white trainers. Literally, Liam's the flare, and it has just spread throughout the entire club. And now there isn't one person that you can point at, I don't think, and go, well, you don't help the fan experience. Everybody is really absolutely dialed in on it. And I mean, the fan zone, let's face it, like you say, you go on away days. Our fan zone is something to be proud of, I think. Good beers, good food. There's always entertainment in there. It's always absolutely rammed. You just have to try and avoid Ben as best you can.
I don't know what else to say. But yeah, it is good. I think that's all I need to say. And again, we take it for granted a little bit. Yeah. I think Liam is probably one of the most public-facing CEOs, but you don't always see him directly being responsible for certain things, because I don't think he ever wants to take the credit himself, because he's very aware that lots of other people have had a role to play. But I agree in that it's kind of got his fingerprints all over it, hasn't it? And Charlie and I are both part of the fan advisory board, and that gives us a little bit of extra insight into the thinking that goes behind some of the new ideas. And it's so affirming more than anything that the club really, really, really do put fans first as often as they possibly can. And it's always at the forefront. There's always that question at the end, how will the fans feel about this, or how will this improve the fan experience? It is absolutely a focal point. So it's nice to see that getting a reward and getting something tangible, really, at the end of it, just to show how much, just basically as a reward for the hard work that's been put in and the forward thinking. But yeah, I agree. This doesn't want to necessarily be a Liam Scully loving, but the guy deserves it for this. Absolutely right. And we'll touch on transfer window obviously later, and that's always going to be a little bit more subjective. But in terms of the fan experience, I don't think anyone can criticise the football club in how far we've come since we got back into the Football League on that side of things.
And I'll just give a little shout out to Rob Noble as well. Now, Rob's old school Lincoln City. I seem to remember, I might be wrong, I seem to think he came on some, maybe it was work experience or some sort of placement or something. And we're talking back in the days of kind of Steph Wright and Dave Roberts as the CEO, where they're decent people, but I think sometimes the club got a little bit lost. There was the whole goal 2010 Championship 2010 thing, and there was the training ground that was built on basically sand, and it crumbled, and there was all this sort of stuff. So Rob came through, I think, at a time where the football club's focus wasn't always as fan-centric as it feels now. And when he came back to the club and was told about it, head of support services, hands up, a little bit dubious, because I can see backroom staff being an advantage, the likes of Logan, people down at the training ground, but head of support service, I think really, we've got some decent people. Do we need that? And with respect to Rob, I think he's done silently. You never see him, you never hear of him. There might be people here going, who the hell's Rob Noble? But he's just one of those people, beavering away, I think, in the background. He's involved, as I understand it, with the fan advisory board, but he wasn't when I stepped down, he came in. And it just goes to show, every appointment the club makes behind the scenes, none of them are jobs for the boys. There's none of those appointments where somebody's come in and we go, we don't really need that. Every single appointment is thought out. The likes of Clive and Jay Wright and Harvey, they don't get to where they are in life by not knowing how to run a business and not knowing how to make a business better every single day. And whether you like a suit and tie at a football club or not, our football club's in the position it is now because of the people that sit around that table every 3 months or however many board meetings they have and make decisions. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I like that, Chris. You're doing that time thing, aren't you? Where, I'm not going to add anything else. I am absolutely on point.
That's right. I've seen the time on the top left corner. I know how long we've allocated for our next part, so I'm going to be quiet.
So we are dead on. We are on 31 minutes and 56 seconds. So if you're listening in at home, you're going to, mate, you're going to get an advert break now. If you're watching live, you'll just get us looking a bit blank and me making a note on a pad of paper. And if you're watching back, you might get a YouTube advert. Phew, it's busy. Back in a second. See, you're not lying.
For a split second.
A little bit of special as well. Here's Ben saying the number of away fans who comment positively on the fan zone after the game is massive. Also, sod off. Pretty sure that's saying to you. We'll go through a couple of comments. We'll go through a couple of these comments. I'll cut this out for the podcast, so this can be a special. So James Harness says, hello, Christopher.
Oh, hello, Trig.
Kate is on board. Hope you're both doing well. Has Dwight York been spotted at the Bentley yet? That's a joke that Charlie won't get because he's a fetus. Mark Churchill is on board. Mark and hopefully Jane as well. Afternoon. Steve Banks is over in Western Australia, Perth. Evening for you. So evening, Steve. I hope you're enjoying the show. And finally, David Ward. David Ward, by the way, really helped me out when I first started doing the City United. Top man. So thank you so much. After 3 main targets, hope to be signed by the end of January. Fingers crossed. Then look further what's on the market. Choices already made. If they sign for us, so let people speculate. We know our targets. I think he's about right with that.
Yeah, I think the club have been, whoever we sign soon will have been in the making for months.
Yeah. Right, we will come back into the full podcast in 3, 2, 1. Brilliant. So we are back. Hopefully you now feel like you want a McDonald's, because that was really quite useful, and it's certainly going to help cover Y Scout. Massive thank you as well to everybody who responded to our shout for patrons. It was really successful. It certainly helped us cover some of the bills that have been going up and bump us back up to a level beyond what we were at before. So really grateful for that. And some of the stuff that we've got planned coming up, hopefully will be accentuated by that additional support. So we do really appreciate that. So we're now going to move on to transfer windows. Now, as I said, a transfer window is subjective. You can come out of it and you'll go, that was a success, that wasn't a success. Probably even a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, it can, to a degree, be subjective. But we're going to try and look back now at the transfer window of the summer window of 2023, loans and permanent players. Chris and I are going to say whether we believe each of those players was a hit and miss and say why, and then we'll come up with whether we feel that the transfer window overall was a success. Here's a disclaimer. We haven't already done this, so we don't know the results. And if the transfer window last summer comes out as not a success, given what we did this season, it actually just goes to show you that transfers and players coming in and out aren't actually the be-all and end-all of how well a club's going to do. That's not arse covering, by the way. That's not because we've got big Liam up.
It is in the end. It turns out to be exactly that.
I don't want Liam listen. I don't know if Liam listens, but I don't want him listening to this going, "Oh, well, they've said nice things about me," and then at the end of the show, we're going, "Well, that was a rubbish window. We would have gone up if we'd been half decent."
I don't think we're going to say that.
I don't think we're going to say that as well. And then just a quick shout from Ben, by the way. Anybody who ordered hoodies, and he's going to hopefully post them out tomorrow or Saturday. So hoodies and running shirts, there was a whole order gone through. They're going to be coming out to you. What's going to be coming out to you now is a transfer window. We're going to start with loan players. We're going to do it chronologically, which for Ben means that happens in real time as they actually arrived. I know he struggles with the words. 10th of August, 2023, we made our first loan signing. And that was Jack Burrows from Coventry City, Chris.
Do you want me just to hit or miss first, and then the explanation? Why?
No, let's do our argument first, then we'll go hit and miss afterwards.
Interesting, isn't it? Because I think under Mark Kennedy, he was kind of a key player, but under Michael Skubala, he's really hardly featured at all. Possibly because that wing-back role under Skubala has been a much more forward-thinking role. So we've played on the left-hand side, particularly basically wingers as wing-backs primarily. And Lass, of course, is basically been undroppable at right wing-back. So I'll be honest with you, my gut here is probably a miss. I'm not saying that he was a terrible signing. I just think the way that the season panned out, didn't really need him in the end. Always a valuable backup, but I think you've got to judge it on performances and just appearances sometimes, and didn't make enough.
That's very interesting, because for the first time ever on the Stacey West podcast, you and I are going to disagree. Because I am not going to select a player as a miss on the basis of changing circumstances. And I think Jack Burrows was a good footballer. And I think right the way up to him getting injured, he was a key part in the side. He was a key part of the team that obviously ended up playing West Ham. I can't remember if he played in that game. He was a key part of bridging that gap between Michael Skubala coming in. He was flexible enough, so if injuries had kicked in, he could play anywhere. He played a little bit in midfield. I put it this way: if Jack Burrows had been our player, do I think he would have been offered a new contract at the end of this season? And the answer is yes, I do. Because I think if he had been our player, I believe that Michael Skubala would have found him a place somewhere within the squad. Because I think that flexibility, there's an element of the Ted Bishop about it, isn't there? There is, he can play left wing back, right wing back. Okay, he's more of a left back or a right back, but he could play those. And, he had the ability to play further forward. He could drop into the central holding midfield. There was an element for me of the Gareth Barry about Jack Burrows in that kind of, that flexibility, and that I can early Gareth Barry.
Yeah, I didn't dislike. I don't want to come across as
no. I don't think
crap
he did.
Player, I dislike him. Yeah. Henceforth, I just think, even with the injuries that we suffered towards the end of the season, he still couldn't get in the team. And did we honestly really miss him? Think, so and so is out. We could really do a Jack Burrows being available. I just think other players fitted in, and Moylan played every role under the sun. Even Danny Mandroiu played in different roles. Sean Rowan was preferred at left wing back, for example, rather than Jack Burrows coming in once in that match where Hackett and Duffy were unavailable. And I just think if you're going to be third choice in any position, I don't know if you're just not that necessary as taking up a squad role. Versatility is really useful. Is that, if you can have the backup, have the depth. Yeah, of course, you always want someone that's got that in your squad. But was it a signing that we're thinking we couldn't have achieved what we did without that signing? No, I think we'd have been fine if we didn't have Jack Burrows in the squad at all this season.
Devil's advocate before we move on. When the injury crisis kicked in and people were being shuffled around, it was match fit players that we were moving around the squad, whereas Jack Burrows hadn't played an awful lot of football. if he's not entirely up to match fitness and we're on that run and we're needing players. So for me, I think he was a hit, even though he spent the last bit of the season on the bench. Now, I'm also going to introduce, a bit late now, but there is also a jury still out. But I think that's best probably for permanent signings. We can't really pick that for loan signings. So we can pick jury still out because there's obviously one player at least that we're going to put in that. So on the 17th of August, 2023, a Lincoln City made another loan signing. And it was Alex Beeston. No, not Beeston. They're not married yet. Alex Mitchell. It was in Charlie Beeston's dreams. It was Alex Mitchell. Are we going with a hit or a miss here? And I've already marked it on the calendar. So
obviously hit. Absolutely outstanding loan player. The one of very few, if any, loan players I've ever seen in a Lincoln City shirt that feels like a permanent player. Just gets it. It's really bought into the club. His dad, for example, we know he watches all of our content. He's really in it. It's it feels like the whole. Like he's just so invested in Lincoln City. It feels like a real. Just his mentality fits in with the club, and of course his ability on the pitch has been great in a position where he's fighting against some really good players, which could get into almost every other team in League One. And let's be honest, he made that right side centre half position his own. We've said Sean Rowan plays because of his left-footedness, but out of Jacko, Pordy, and Mitchell, you pick any of those two to play in, any of those three, to play in the remaining two centre half positions. Then from a fan's perspective, it's much of a muchness. But he made that position his own. He kept his place even when others were fit. For example, when Jacko was out the team, he didn't come straight back into it because Alex was performing so well. I would firstly just like to say once again, I would absolutely love us to sign Alex Mitchell on a permanent deal. How likely that is, I don't know, because I think he's good enough to play in Championship. But there's no doubt whatsoever that he's been a hit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's been a hit. I echo everything you say. In the winter transfer window, and people saying he might be recalled, I'm looking at the team going, well, if he is, you've got the captain, Pordy O'Connor, obviously Sean Rowan's the left side. You've got Adam Jackson, who was our player of the season, the Stacey West player of the season the year before. You've got TJ Omer, who I still think, had he been on a different contract, might have been somebody that we may have retained again for that flexibility. We had an embarrassment of riches at centre half. And when we signed Alex Mitchell, I'm sure on the 18th of August, I was sat there going, I can't really understand why we've signed another centre half. And yeah, I mean, he was just obviously a miss. He's the only lone player, I think, that I will be genuinely disappointed if we don't sign. I don't fall in love with lone players. I get it. They come in, you borrow them, they belong to somebody else. Like I borrowed your dumbbells but yeah, I'm not going to be disappointed if I can't keep them because I'm buying my own dumbbells. I borrowed your dumbbells for a function until I can get my own stuff. That's what the loan market is. You're borrowing something from somebody else with the intention of giving it back. Okay, sometimes you go, we'll buy that player. Brilliant. I genuinely will be disappointed for the very first time ever if we're unable, and I think we would like to, if we're unable to sign Alex Mitchell because exactly what you said, he just fits.
Yeah, I don't think I dare get my hopes up in kind of thinking that we will. I think it would be stupid for us not to be interested. I don't know anything from inside the club, but it just makes total sense that we would at least ask the question and potentially try and put a deal together. I think what we've got to be really respectful of is the fact that he isn't our player. He'd signed a new deal at Millwall, a league up. Obviously, the financial package, we don't know what the financial package is, but you expect it to be of a level that's higher than what we can afford. So there's got to be an element of negotiation here, I think. But yeah, so if another League One club of a similar size to us signs Alex Mitchell, I will be gutted.
Yeah.
If Charlton Athletic sign him and you think, is he staying in London, you imagine their top end of their wage structure is going to be way above what we can afford.
Yeah.
And or if he stays at Millwall, I think you can accept that. I would prefer him to be our player, of course, but you can accept that. You understand what's going on. But yeah, I absolutely wouldn't want him to sign for another club of our standing. But I also can't see why on earth he would. He doesn't seem like the sort of guy that would do that. So I don't think I can bring myself to say I'll be gutted if we don't get him, but under certain circumstances, I would. But please sign Alex. Yeah.
So he's a hit. The next person that we're going to discuss was signed on the 1st of September 2023. We did a live about it. His name is Jack Vale. We got him from Blackburn Rovers. Chris.
Miss. Just never really settled. It's weird because we signed him whilst he was injured, and a player of that quality, as we were told at the time, wouldn't have been available for Lincoln City if he was fully fit. Would have been part of Blackburn Rovers' squad, would have been already got a loan out of a team, let's be honest, of a probably at the time more aspirational or of a bigger budget than us. He just never really settled, did he? And never really got going. That first couple of appearances, he seemed to put himself back. He seemed to be a real kind of a nuisance, really, sort of player that you think would really be difficult to play against from a centre-back's perspective. He just seemed like the sort of player that once he got fit would kind of hit the ground running, but he just never really seemed to. Once he actually seemed to be fit and was getting starts, that kind of edge that he had when he first came back after his injury seemed to be lost a little. Probably a victim of the fact that he came into the team at a time where we were in poor form. We imagine when you're on poor form, question marks about the manager, etc. It's not going to be the best atmosphere to play your best game. And then he never really seemed to be favoured by Michael Skubala ever since the Cambridge away game. I think this one probably has to go down as a miss. Also because he was kind of promised
visual cues.
All right, sorry.
No, sure. Go on, you're all right.
The last thing I was going to say was almost because of the messaging potentially from the club a little bit as well. This isn't a criticism; it's of how things panned out. But specifically with him, is that we wouldn't have been able to buy someone of this or to sign someone of this standard unless he was carrying an injury or something. So we're going to have to be without him for a few weeks before we get the benefits. That kind of just increases expectations a little, I think, which is maybe unfair on Jack, but they're the expectations then that he gets compared to. And I just don't think he quite hit them, especially when you're comparing someone that came in his role in January that absolutely exceeded expectations.
Just purely from an achievement, irrespective of what we expected of him or anything like that, purely and simply on his achievements and on his output, he's a miss. And there's reasons for that. When we say a player's a miss, we're not saying he's a bad player or anything like that. We're just saying it didn't work out. It didn't work out for Jack Vale because he was injured when he came. He never really looked match fit. The first 5 minutes where he came on for his first game, he ran around like Scrappy Doo. I thought we're going to love him. And then between then and leaving the club, I think in total he had something like 2 shots on target for a striker. He came in at a time where we weren't really creating anything. We talk about the striker issue that we had, but actually we had a real creativity issue. I think and whether that's players' faults or whether that's Mark Kennedy's fault for the way we played football, but we had a creativity issue. And then obviously Cambridge away, I don't think he impressed when he came on, and that was the end of that. So the loan players, at the end of the loan players at the moment, you have 1 hit and 2 misses. I have 2 hits and 1 miss. So we'll go on to the permanent players. There are 6 permanent players. So we've got about, we can talk about each one for about a minute or 2 each. So just So let's start right at the beginning. And this is interesting because we made our first permanent signing of last summer on the 14th of June. People are saying about us getting our business done now. It's the 23rd of May. So it just goes to show that, if we haven't signed anybody in 3 weeks, we're still comparable to last season. So on the 14th of June, 2023, we signed Rico Hackett from Portsmouth. I'll take the lead on this one, if that's okay, because I'll pass them all over to you straight away. So Rico, a permanent player, I think it's a little harder to be a definitive hit or miss because there can be a question mark over them still. And at the end of the 21-22 season, there may have been a question mark over Ted. There may have been a question mark over Lasse Sorensen. Yet these are players that now you go, actually, they were good signings for the football club. There's no question mark, in my opinion, over Rico Hackett. The only thing that stopped him, I think, reaching double digits for goals and assists, and I may even be doing him a disservice there because he may have reached it anyway. But the only thing was his injury. He proved to be flexible. Portsmouth fans were saying, don't play him at left wing back. He ain't a left wing back. He's an inside forward. He'll cut inside. He'll do all this and that. Rico Hackett is a perfect example of what we were talking about earlier with Hakeem Adelakun. If you get the right player in the right environment, surrounded by the right people and the right atmosphere, you end up with a real hit. He struggled at Portsmouth for various reasons. I mean, he struggled by scoring goals and assists, but still couldn't quite get in the side. For me, he's going to be a major player for us next season, and so without a doubt, he's a hit on the count for me.
Yeah, absolutely right. Performed well in big moments as well. When we absolutely needed someone to pull something out of the bag, he was someone that really rose to the occasion. Burton away, obviously, really stands out. But also the game back after his injury, when he came on against Wickham, we were superb in that second half against Wickham. Deserved that point because they couldn't get out. They couldn't get out for the whole of that second half, and Rico was really, really, really good in that game. I think that was his first game back after his injury, wasn't it?
Possibly.
Yeah, and of course there's been some big moments as well where he scored some big goals. But yeah, it's just, for me, it's like a big game player and just really reliable, versatile, good, absolute hit, and will continue to be a hit in my opinion next season as well.
And I have done him a disservice because last season he got 8 goals and 4 assists. So he had 12 goal involvements over the course of the season. And when you consider that he was out from the 21st of October, which was when we beat Fleetwood 1-0, where he got the assist to the Wickham game, that was the gap. So he was out to the 13th of January. So what's that? 3 months? Just under 3 months out.
Mm-hmm.
He had 12 goal involvements. If he plays those 3 months, then he's probably getting 20 goal involvements.
Yeah, because the thing is, the amount of games that we have in that part of the season as well, definitely.
Yeah, and what's really curious is he wasn't involved in a goal after Bristol Rovers, and he was only involved in one from Stevenage when we drew 0-0. So towards the end of the season, but I think again, you could say fitness a little bit over that, having missed 3 months of the season. And
I just think how key his performances were that got us going on that magical run. I think big moments that he kind of got out, particularly with Rovers. And Burton, sorry, made out of nothing, didn't he? So yeah, I know you can't just say after one performance it suddenly means he's a hit. I just think that highlights his importance and his ability. So good.
July the 1st, we will go with the Goalkeepers Union first of all. So according to this, and I think this is because that's when we could officially sign them on in terms of free agents, maybe. Lucas Jensen on a free transfer from Burnley. It would be remiss of me to try and take the goalkeeper from a fellow goalkeeper.
Best goalkeeper in League One. Objectively, the best goalkeeper in League One as well. It's not just an opinion, that is fact, according to various metrics. And he's not even just the best. He's the best by an absolute mile in the real key goalkeeping stats, which are things like stopping goals. There's more to goalkeeping than that, as we all know, but he just exceeds in that. Absolute best goalkeeper in League One. Can't be anything other than a massive hit. Now,
when I sometimes want to give my dog a really delight my dog, what I'll do is Amazon will come to the door and I will let him have the cardboard and he'll run off and he'll chew the cardboard up. And there's a brief moment where I pass him that cardboard and he takes it from me, and the look in his eye is just pure, unadulterated joy. And that's the look you have in your eye when you're talking about Lucas Jensen. Because
absolutely
and rightly so. In terms of goalkeepers that Lincoln City have owned, he is probably the best that I remember in my lifetime. And people will go back to David Felgate and Peter Grotier, who, one was come from West Ham and was, excellent for us, and the other one, David Felgate, played for Wales. I think back to Rob Birch was a big signing for us. He was a big keeper. But I don't think, bear in mind we're in the third tier, I don't think there's been a goalkeeper as good as Lucas Jensen that we have owned. And I will put him on a par with Alex Palmer and Carl Rushworth. Those three, they've all been outstanding goalkeepers. A Grimsby fan messaged me the other day about Jordan Wright. They're apparently linked with Jordan Wright, so not something we're going to discuss because it's rumour. And I said, well, look, he's a top-class League Two goalkeeper who could play in League One, but he's just been stuck behind some superb goalkeepers at Lincoln City over the past few seasons. Jensen's one, and that's a double hit. I don't know why I hadn't already marked it down on your sheet. So another player that we signed on a free on allegedly July the 1st, which I think was announced earlier, Alistair Smith from Sutton United. Chris.
This is I'm going to use my jury's out card here.
Okay.
I was really excited by the signing of Ali Smith. I thought the profile of player that we seemed to be going after under Mark Kennedy fitted that really well. We mentioned this before, but it might just be because of his stature, but he seemed a very similar sort of midfielder to Mark O'Hara when we signed him on loan. I just remembered the impact he had. And I felt Ali would be a really, really good signing for us. And he played a lot of games, but he never got the opportunity to play in his preferred central midfield position. Went out on loan. The message from the club seems to be at his request, but we don't know for sure. But it seems to be at his request to go and get first team football in his preferred position, and really impressed and was a real key part of Colchester staying up. I think what's worth touching on with Colchester is league positions do sometimes lie. They were really struggling, but their performances and their results really, really improved for the second half of the season. They only lost like 4 games, I think, since the Cowleys came in, which for a team that finished 22nd in League Two is a huge achievement, and he was a big part of that. I thought before Jez George's recent interview that Ali would be coming back into the building this pre-season with a real opportunity to stake a claim for a first team role, or at least a first team squad role. I think from his perspective, you think he could really fight for one. The message seemed to be a little bit that he'll be part of things, but maybe if there is another opportunity for Ali, then both parties would be happy to take that, which actually surprised me a little bit. So for me, I think the jury's out in regard to from like the club's perspective. From my perspective, I would say, even though he been out on loan, I would kind of be swaying towards hit, just because I think there's still a real good player in there and potential for us to become a first team player. But from the message that we've got from the club, or reading between the lines, I think maybe just jury's out might be a more suitable tag.
Well, I am going with miss on Ali Smith.
Okay.
Because I don't think that we will see him play regular football for Lincoln City again. I think he was a player that when he first signed, we hadn't made another of our summer signings, which we'll come on to. There was a thought that he was going to be a key player for us. Thought he looked all right in pre-season. He had a lot of opportunity. You can't, he's not a player that you can say, well, he didn't quite get the breaks. He wasn't playing in this position. He wasn't playing in that position. There was a point where he was the only player that had appeared in every single game, in every single competition. I don't think there was a lack of effort in there, but there was 1 or 2 moments, particularly I seem to recall Blackpool away, where there was a shirt challenge, which at the time, I can accept a shirt challenge if you're on a 16-game unbeaten run, or if do you know what I mean? But when you're on your arse, and we were on our arses at Blackpool, we were the walking dead. We'd lost 4 or 5 in a row or whatever. We'd drawn a couple, we'd dropped away. The bare minimum you've got to see there is that you've got to see that passion, you've got to see that engagement, and it was very visible to me that Ali Smith had, for one reason or another, not quite got that engagement with the rest of the team. Now, from a fan's point of view, that's criminal. From a human point of view, it's understandable. Sometimes I've been in jobs where you just realise, look, it ain't working for me. And if you're in IT or something, it's a little bit different because you're not throwing tackles in, you're not being judged by people on podcasts. But this is football, and you are. I think Alistair Smith is a good footballer. I think if he makes a move into League Two, anywhere in League Two, 1 to 24, I think he's a success. I think if he goes to the right League One side of Mansfield Town, he could be a success. I think in terms of Lincoln City and a transfer, I think he's a miss.
Fair enough. I think, what would you say? I think obviously that the fee would be interesting if he was to leave the club this summer, but we get a fee for him after signing him on a free. Do you put that down as a hit from a financial perspective?
Yes.
Or does it depend on the fee?
Yeah, you put it down. No, you put it down as a hit because you get a fee for it for him. But at the moment, I'm making my judgment on whether I feel they're a hit and a miss. And there's only one person that I'm going to be jury out, which we'll come on to. But we've got 3 players left. They're going to be interesting. I've got one in each camp. The first player that I am going to pick up on is former Sheffield Wednesday wingback Jayden Brown. who impressed us at Boston. Did he score? Was it one fullback to the other fullback? Or
so, yeah.
I remember you raving about that particular ball going across one fullback to the other. And
it was more the tactical side of it
yeah.
that I was impressed with. But obviously, it's good. It's nothing more when you're playing a back 5/3. When one wing back assists for another one to score, that is the dream. Yeah. So I remember that's what I was quite excited about at the time.
So again, and I'm conscious we're on the way for an hour. I was worrying if we were going to be able to fill this, and now I can hear Fee in the kitchen padding around for us to do our pizzas. I'll take Jayden Brown first of all. There is a player in there, but for Lincoln City, he has been a miss for whatever reason. He just has been. I think he was unlucky. He got injured when he came back in from injury, then couldn't get in the side. And then I think it became quickly apparent under Michael Scabala that we've got Dylan Duffy, we've got Rico Hackett, we've got Sean Rowan, we even had Jack Burrows. Yeah, he was almost as far down the pecking order as getting into a Lincoln City side as I was. And I just think I think he was one of the ones over the summer that was more of a roll of the dice. There was one that perhaps didn't come with the 6 months, 12 months scouting behind him, that he's come available. We know a bit about him. Let's see what will happen. And I don't think it did happen. So for me, he's a miss, but I'll back him to have the ability to go on and be decent at this level if he gets the right team and the right love.
Agreed. Yeah, I think there's no denying that he's been a miss. Argument that he was unlucky in terms of his opportunities because he never really had the opportunity to stake a real claim. I even remember in the game, was it Wickham or Blackpool when we won 3-0? I appreciate this. That was really early in the season and he was playing well. Jack Burrows came on for him. I think it was Jack Burrows' debut. And Mark Kennedy made a point in his interview because Jayden was disappointed to come off. And he says, what did I do wrong? And Mark said, nothing. It was just fresh legs. It was just a way of just changing the dynamic. And you think, from a club's perspective, it makes sense. From a player's perspective, you think, bloody hell, that's annoying. Like, I've done nothing wrong. As long as I get an opportunity again. And from that point, he never really had the opportunity to get guaranteed starts. I don't think he ever got 90 minutes, did he, in the league? So there's an argument that he never really had a fair opportunity. But for a player that didn't have the opportunity, you think, okay, you've got an opportunity to go out on loan now in January, go and play some games, come back, and if you impress really well, then go and be part of the team. Just like, let's say, Freddie Draper did in the first half of the season. And he played the 7 games for St Mirren. He made, whether it's him, you'd imagine he had some say in the club he went to. I imagine they weren't the only suitors for him, but that he just made the wrong decision. But let's be completely honest from a Jayden Brown's career's perspective, from him in terms of appearances, whether it's him, agent, or just situation, I'm not going to put the blame on him, hardly played for Jeff Wednesday, hardly played for us, hardly played for St Mirren. Absolutely, clearly has the ability, wouldn't have been have the history he's got in the back catalogue of clubs if he hasn't got ability. But his next move is really important. So has he got the ability to be a good player at this level? Yes. My, to be honest, gut instinct, or, you know, for what it's worth, if I was his agent, I'd be searching for a League 2 club with a desire for promotion for League 1 that's going to almost guarantee game, as near as you can guarantee game time. Just say, right, go and play games, mate. Get your career back on track. And then it wouldn't surprise me if he got promoted with the League 2 team and then was a fixture in that team once he got into League 1 as well. But I think it's a point in his career he has to go and play, and I just can't see him doing it here. So miss for that reason.
Do you know where I think he'd be good? Just before we move on, Bromley have just come up, haven't they? And I think somewhere
that's so Bromley, weird. I was just about to say Bromley. That's a great shout
because it's the sort of team where he would be the big fish, and like you say. There was an instant, I'm not going to talk about it on the podcast, but there was something between myself and Jayden Brown after the Notts County game that just made me think, here's a player who needs confidence, and he isn't getting it from his manager at the time. And I think we probably lost the opportunity to see the best of Jayden Brown under Mark Kennedy, and then we didn't then get to see that under Michael Scabala. 2 players left. One of them was, I believe, meant to be the marquee signing of the summer. I think the marquee signing of the summer was either the first one we made, Rico Hackett, or the last one we made. It was meant to be Tyler Walker. I can't possibly judge this signing on anything anything rather other than a jury's out, because he's been out injured all season. So for me, really simple. You can't say whether Tyler Walker's a hit or a miss until he gets on the grass next season, and hopefully gets 35 odd games, 10 goals, and then he's a hit.
Yeah, you can't say anything. It's impossible for us to know. The only thing that'll be super interesting after his injury is what version of Tyler Walker have we actually got? Because we kind of asked that question last summer and haven't got an answer because he picked up a really unfortunate injury. So I just feel like we're in the same position now as we were then, but with more question marks. Hence why jury's out has to be the only possible outcome for this one. Obviously, hope we get the best version of Tyler back.
Yeah, and look, I think in terms of the squad, when we're talking about next season, we're talking about Tyler. So to a degree, that leans in more towards being going to the hit than going to the miss, because he's obviously somebody I think that factors into the manager's thinking. Where he came on the last game of the season, could have scored. To be fair, he had it been a fit Tyler Walker that had got 10 games behind under him, maybe scores against Portsmouth anyway. So I personally, I think in 12 months' time, if we were to do a retrospective on this transfer window again for the players that are still at the club, he's one that you would go, yeah, well, he's been a hit now, hasn't he? And I genuinely, firmly believe that. I still think Tyler Walker is a top-end League One player. And people point to his spell at Portsmouth and go, well, he didn't do that well there. Rico Hackett was there at the same time and he didn't. And we're talking about him now being potentially the marquee signing of the summer. But the marquee signing of the summer, potentially, and in my opinion, in terms of performance, and the final one, which gives me more hits than misses, by the way, so that's where I end up on the transfer window, is Ethan Hamilton. I'll throw Ethan Hamilton over to you first.
Obvious hit. I think we've been waxing lyrical about Ethan Arahan, which absolutely is deserved, but there was a period of time earlier in the season where Ethan Hamilton was the one that was getting the headlines, and that's not because Arahan wasn't performing, but it's because Hamilton was absolutely excelling. With those as a two, he was brilliant. When he played slightly further forward, he did really, really well. You explained the reason why you said Ali Smith maybe was a miss for you from that more kind of mentality side. You could never, ever question that side of Ethan Hamilton's game. He was decent on the ball. He's technically proficient, but it's those immeasurables, isn't it? Those intangibles. There's things like grit, determination, desire, work rate, commitment, like absolutely in abundance. And it's obviously so unfortunate to pick up the injury he picked up, but even missing all those games, I think he had a huge role to play in the success we had this season. So yeah, massive hit, and hopefully will continue to be once next season comes around.
Yeah, same. I think next season is going to be a little more challenging for him, because my understanding is that he may only be returning to fitness around the time it kicks off. He may miss a bit of pre-season. He was still on crutches, obviously, on the final day of the season. Saw him on the pitch. So the injury is really, really unfortunate. He's a player for me that I still think has got a huge future at Lincoln. I think he's someone that I can see being a key player for us. I think he's versatile. I think he has that kind of stoic hardness about him that I really like. Were we to go in and try and sign Conor McGrandles and bring him back, McGrandles, Arahan and Hamilton, for me is three players who could play in the midfield of 95% of teams in League One, and one or two of them may even be valuable members of a squad in the lower reaches of the Championship. I firmly believe Ethan Hamilton would be more than happy doing a job at Oxford United or at trying to think who else is in that division now, Plymouth or somewhere like that. He could play there. So he's an undoubted hit. So the scores on the doors.
I haven't been keeping track of this, by the way.
I have.
Interesting.
I think last transfer window was a hit, 4 hits, 3 misses, 1 jury out. Now that is 6, 7, 8. Your 8 is a little different. You only have 3 hits.
Do I?
You have 3 misses and 2 juries out.
Oh, so it's 50-50 kind of thing.
So, yeah, 50-50. So, for you, the jury is still out on the last transfer window. For me, it's a hit. Tyler Walker could tip it in either balance.
Can I just say, on mine, I think the hits massively outweigh the Like the benefits brought by the hits massively outweigh the negatives, if you can call them negatives, that were brought in by the misses.
Yeah.
So deep down, I still feel like it's a hit. And Liam, if you're listening, I still do think it was a hit. Those players that have been hits have been massive. But I'm surprised that I was that negative on it. Actually, to be honest, looking back,
well, I don't think it's negative, and I don't think you can even judge a transfer window on how was that player, because it's like you say, if you sign 2 players who score 20 goals a season and sign 6 players who were kind of projects and they don't really work out, and you've got 2 that have done well and 6 that haven't, the transfer window is still a hit because you've pulled 2 big players out. And we pulled out Ethan Hamilton, and we pulled out Alex Mitchell, and we pulled out Rico Hackett, key players, and we were already adding to a squad that had Ethan and Ben House and Adam Jackson and Pordy O'Connor and Sean Rowan and Les Sorensen. So all we were doing was kind of peppering and adding and building to a side. So I'm actually confused because I had Ethan Hamilton. I'm just thinking I should have had more hits. Jack Burrows, Ethan Hamilton, Lucas Jensen, Alex Mitchell. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Rico, Lucas, Ethan, Alex. Yeah, I've done adding up somewhere wrong. And Jack Burrows, I said, was a hit. I should have had 5. How many players did we sign? 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I've got.
You've got 4 hits.
2, 3,
I haven't
4
added
hits,
Ethan Hamilton.
4 hits,
yeah.
3 misses, 2 juries out for me.
Yeah, I hadn't put Ethan Hamilton on it. So in terms of podcast recruitment, I was a miss. So that's a shame, isn't it? In terms of podcast presenters. No, I do words, not numbers. This is when you need Chris Ray here. He doesn't just colour in, he knows numbers as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're 1 hour and 11 minutes in. Of course we are. But hope you've enjoyed it. We are going to keep trying to put some stuff out for you to listen to over the summer. It is challenging at times, isn't it, to find anything football centric. We're not going to be doing Euros content. I'm not personally at the minute. I'm not interested really. I will be when it kicks off, but I've got no passion for it. So we will be doing dedicated Lincoln City content over the next few weeks. I am going now to quickly get pizza and try and eat that before Chris turns up and tries to beat me at pool. Last time we played pool, Chris and I played doubles against Dave, and he 7 boulders, which was particularly embarrassing.
I can just point out, prior to that game, it was the best pool I've ever played in my life.
Yeah.
And then we get absolutely battered when it was 2v1. So I think there's a common denominator there. What?
Yeah, I think there is as well. Yeah. Oh, no, wait a minute. That's me. Right, we're all off to eat pizza. We'll get this out on audio a little bit later on. But if you're listening to that, that's the most irrelevant thing I've ever said because you know that and have listened to it. Remember the Spotify thing. Again, it's not always appearing on Spotify, but I'll put that out as a message. So in the meantime, just continue to enjoy your summer. We'll be back next week. Up the Imps.
Up the Imps.